The grand amphitheater of the Galactic Council floated in the void between stars, a magnificent structure of crystalline architecture and quantum-folded space that defied the laws of physics as humanity understood them. Ambassador Sarachan stood at the center of the circular chamber, her standard-issue diplomatic uniform feeling inadequate compared to the flowing energy fields and bioluminescent garments worn by the representatives of the 73 advanced civilizations that surrounded her. Above, the holographic display showed Earth's fleet, 42 vessels that humanity had painstakingly built over the past 3 decades since first contact. To Sarah, they represented the culmination of human ingenuity, sacrifice, and hope. To the Council, they were apparently a joke. The laughter had started with the Zafrani delegation, their melodious voices creating harmonics that would have been beautiful if they weren't dripping with condescension. The Ctheran followed, their insectoid mandibles clicking in what their translators rendered as amused chittering. Even the normally stoic Vorium, massive beings of living stone, produced low rumbling sounds that registered as mirth. Sarah's jaw tightened, her dark eyes scanning the chamber as the mockery spread like wildfire through the assembly. Beside her, Lieutenant Commander Marcus Webb remained at attention, his military bearing impeccable despite the flush of anger creeping up his neck. She could see his fists clenched behind his back, could sense the barely contained fury radiating from Earth's senior military advisor. High Arbiter Thelzara, a being of pure energy contained within an ornate crystalline vessel, raised one shimmering appendage to restore order. The laughter gradually subsided, replaced by an expectant silence that somehow felt worse. Ambassador Chen, Thelzara's voice resonated through the chamber, translated simultaneously into every language known to the Council. While we appreciate Earth's enthusiasm in presenting its defensive capabilities, I'm afraid we must address the reality of your situation. The Arbiter's form pulsed with colors that Sarah's cultural briefing translated as diplomatic pity. Your vessels are, to be frank, technologically inferior by approximately 4,000 years to even our most basic patrol craft. Sarah had prepared for this moment. She'd spent 6 months traveling to the Council's neutral meeting space aboard the ESS Prometheus, humanity's fastest ship, which still took half a year to traverse the distance that other species covered in days. She'd reviewed every diplomatic protocol, every cultural sensitivity, every possible angle of negotiation. But nothing had quite prepared her for the casual dismissal in Thelzara's tone, the way entire civilizations looked at humanity's greatest achievements and saw primitive toys. High Arbiter, she began, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. Earth acknowledges that we are newcomers to the galactic community. However, we've demonstrated our capacity for rapid advancement and innovation. We're not requesting full military partnership, merely the basic defensive technologies that would allow us to protect our system from external threats. The VRYNN ambassador, a serpentine creature whose species had mastered faster-than-light travel before humanity had discovered fire, slithered forward in his suspension field. Protect your system from what threats, precisely? His translator rendered his words with barely concealed amusement. You exist in what we call a quiet pocket of space. No strategic resources, no territorial disputes, nothing of value except your quaint little planet. The only threat to Earth is its own primitive nature. The comment drew another round of chuckles from various delegations. Besides, the VRYNN continued, sharing advanced defensive technology with a species still prone to internal conflicts would violate the technological concordat. You understand, I'm sure. Marcus stepped forward, and Sarah felt her stomach drop. She'd specifically instructed him to let her handle all diplomatic exchanges, but she could see the military man had reached his limit. With respect, Ambassador VRYNN, Marcus's voice was ice. Humanity's internal politics are our own concern. We've maintained global peace for 12 years, which your own records indicate is the primary threshold for concordat consideration. He gestured to the holographic fleet above them. These ships represent a unified Earth. Every nation contributed. Every culture collaborated. We've met your requirements. The Arbiter's colors shifted to what might have been surprise or irritation. Lieutenant Commander Webb, is it? Your passion is noted, but I'm afraid you misunderstand the situation. The 12-year peace requirement is merely one of 47 criteria. Your species also lacks quantum consciousness integration, null space navigation, entropic field manipulation, and dozens of other fundamental technologies. It would take your civilization centuries to bridge these gaps, assuming optimal development. Thelzara's form dimmed slightly, a gesture of finality. The Council's decision is not meant as an insult. We simply cannot justify the resource allocation required to uplift the species at your current development level. Perhaps in another 1,000 years, we can revisit this discussion. Sarah felt the dismissal like a physical blow. 1,000 years. Earth had come to the Council with urgent requests because their long-range sensors had detected something at the edge of their system, massive gravitational anomalies that didn't match any known natural phenomena. Their best scientists couldn't identify them, but every instinct said they represented a threat. The Council had the technology to scan the anomalies in seconds, to identify and potentially neutralize any danger, but instead they offered the galactic equivalent of "come back later." She opened her mouth to protest, to plead if necessary, but Marcus spoke first. "Then I suppose we're done here." His tone was flat, final. "Ambassador Chen, I recommend we return to Earth immediately." He executed a precise military turn toward the exit. Sarah stared at him in shock. They'd traveled 6 months for this audience, and he wanted to leave after 15 minutes? But then she caught his eye and saw something there, a deliberate intensity that stopped her protest. Marcus Webb had served in 3 branches of Earth's military before joining the Unified Space Command. He'd been in more combat situations than anyone else in the fleet. If he wanted to leave, he had a reason. Sarah turned back to the Council, forcing her diplomatic mask into place. "High Arbiter, representatives of the Galactic Council, Earth thanks you for your time and consideration. We will, as suggested, continue our independent development." She allowed herself a small, cold smile. "Perhaps our next meeting will be more productive. For everyone involved." The words were measured, professional, but she let just enough edge creep in to suggest there was more behind them. Let them wonder. Let them think humanity had some pride to salvage from this humiliation. As they walked through the quantum corridor that led to the docking ring where the Prometheus waited, Sarah grabbed Marcus's arm. "What are you doing? We can't just give up." "Those anomalies," he placed a finger to his lips, then tapped his ear and pointed around them. "Right." The Council facility would be monitored, every conversation potentially recorded. She bit back her questions and followed him in silence through the impossible architecture, past other species delegations who barely glanced at the primitive humans, until they reached the familiar metal corridor of their own ship. The moment the airlock sealed behind them, Marcus pulled her into the nearest conference room. Captain Rodriguez, commander of the Prometheus, was already waiting with Admiral Victoria Okonkwo, who'd been observing the Council session via quantum-encrypted relay from Earth. The Admiral's dark skin showed the weariness of someone who'd spent too many nights coordinating global defenses with insufficient resources. "Well," Okonkwo said without preamble, "that went exactly as predicted." Sarah looked between the 3 military officers, feeling something shift in her understanding of the situation. "Someone want to tell me what's actually going on?" Marcus gestured to the Admiral, who activated a privacy field around the conference room, technology that humanity had quietly developed without sharing the details with the Council. "Ambassador Chen, what I'm about to tell you is classified at the highest level. As of now, you're being read into Protocol Omega." Okonkwo's expression was grave. "The Galactic Council's dismissal of our fleet capabilities was not just expected, it was necessary." She brought up a holographic display that showed Earth's solar system, with multiple red markers at its outer edge. "These gravitational anomalies we detected? They're not natural phenomena. Our best analysis suggests they're ships, dozens of them, using some kind of cloaking technology that masks everything except their gravitational footprint." Sarah felt her blood run cold. "Ships? Whose?" Captain Rodriguez, a stern woman with silver hair and sharp eyes, answered. "Unknown. They don't match any configuration in the Council database, Which means either they're from a species the Council hasn't encountered, or... She paused meaningfully. Or they're from a species the Council has encountered but doesn't want to discuss. Either option is problematic. Marcus pulled up another display, this one showing what looked like combat projections. They've been holding position for 6 weeks, just watching. The pattern suggests reconnaissance before an invasion. Then we need to convince the Council to help us. Sarah's diplomatic training warred with rising panic. If there's an unknown hostile force, that changes everything. They have to. Admiral Okonkwo shook her head. We presented the anomaly data in our initial contact. The Council's Science Directorate reviewed it and declared it likely natural phenomena of no concern. They refused further investigation. Her jaw tightened. Ambassador, the Galactic Council operates on a principle of non-interference combined with benign neglect. They maintain the status quo among member species, but they don't actively protect frontier worlds, especially not pre-uplift civilizations like ours. We're on our own. Sarah sank into a chair, her mind racing through implications and possibilities. 6 months of diplomatic preparation, humanity's best hope for protection, and it all amounted to nothing. So what do we do? Those 42 ships the Council was laughing at, they're all we have. If these unknown vessels are hostile and advanced enough that their cloaking technology exceeds Council databases. She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. They all knew that humanity's fleet, impressive by Earth standards, would be hopelessly outmatched. Marcus leaned forward, and for the first time since the Council session, she saw him smile. It wasn't a happy expression. It was the cold, calculating smile of a predator. Those 42 ships the Council saw? That's what we wanted them to see. What Earth wanted everyone to see. He brought up a new display, and Sarah's breath caught. The image showed a vast complex on the far side of Earth's moon, hidden in permanently shadowed craters. Massive construction facilities, power signatures that dwarfed anything in the public fleet, and ship designs that looked nothing like the vessels humanity had revealed. For the past 30 years, since the day we discovered we weren't alone in the universe, Earth has been running 2 space programs. One public, one very much not. Admiral Okonkwo continued the briefing. The public program, the one producing our primitive fleet, serves multiple purposes. It demonstrates good faith to the Council, it unites Earth's population behind a common goal, and most importantly, it provides perfect camouflage for Protocol Omega. She highlighted sections of the lunar facility. Humanity has always excelled at one thing above all others, warfare. Not because we're inherently aggressive, but because for thousands of years, survival meant outthinking, outmaneuvering, and outlasting enemies with superior numbers or strength. When the Council made first contact and we saw their technology, their casual dominance, every government on Earth had the same reaction: never again would we be helpless. Sarah stared at the display, her diplomatic mind struggling to process what she was seeing. How is this possible? The resources alone would require the entire planet's industrial output. Someone would notice. Captain Rodriguez laughed, a short bark of sound. Someone did notice. Everyone noticed. Where do you think the materials for the public fleet came from? Every ton of refined metal, every component, every resource humanity supposedly poured into those 42 ships? About 60% went to the actual vessels. The other 40% was diverted, hidden in accounting, smuggled through supply chains, and redirected to the Omega facilities. Our public ships are impressive for deliberately handicapped designs, Marcus added. We limited ourselves to technologies the Council would expect from a developing species, avoided anything that might seem too advanced or raise questions. Meanwhile, our best scientists and engineers, working in facilities the Council doesn't know exist, have been reverse engineering and extrapolating from every scrap of alien technology we could legally acquire or quietly steal. His smile widened. Turns out, when you tell humanity's greatest minds that alien civilizations think we're primitive, they get motivated. Admiral Okonkwo brought up another image, sleek vessels that combined human engineering aesthetics with clearly alien technological principles. The Omega fleet currently consists of 37 heavy cruisers, 64 destroyers, over 200 fighters, and 3 dreadnoughts. Each one incorporates quantum drive systems reverse-engineered from Council commercial technology, weaponry based on principles we've borrowed from various sources, and defensive systems that represent uniquely human innovations. She locked eyes with Sarah. The Council thinks we're defenseless. Whatever's lurking at the edge of our system thinks we're easy prey. They're both wrong. Sarah's diplomatic instincts warred with a dozen emotions. Pride that humanity had managed this incredible deception. Anger that she'd been kept in the dark. Fear about what would happen when the truth emerged. If we reveal this fleet, the Council will consider it a violation of the technological concordat. We could be sanctioned, isolated, or worse. Okonkwo nodded gravely. That's why Protocol Omega includes strict engagement parameters. The hidden fleet only activates under specific threat conditions. An unknown force positioning for attack on Earth qualifies. She leaned back. Ambassador, I need you to understand, we didn't want this. Every leader on Earth would prefer galactic partnership, peaceful cooperation, all the ideals you've been negotiating for. But we can't bet our species' survival on the hope that the Council will protect us when they've explicitly stated they won't. Marcus pulled up tactical projections. The unknown vessels will likely make their move within the next 2 weeks based on their positioning pattern. When they do, Earth's public fleet will respond, exactly as expected. They'll fight bravely, and they'll be overwhelmed, also as expected. His expression hardened. And then, when our enemies think they've won, when they move in for whatever they're planning, we activate Protocol Omega. The real fleet emerges, and we show the galaxy what humanity does to those who threaten our home. Sarah stood, walking to the viewport where Earth hung in the distance, a blue marble that contained 8 billion souls blissfully unaware of the danger approaching. She thought about the Council's laughter, their casual dismissal of human achievement. Part of her wanted to feel vindicated, knowing that humanity had outmaneuvered species thousands of years more advanced. But mostly, she felt the terrible weight of what was coming. And if the Omega fleet isn't enough? If these unknown attackers have technology that surpasses even our hidden capabilities? The question hung in the air like a death sentence. Admiral Okonkwo's voice was quiet but firm. Then we make them pay for every inch of space, every moon, every planet. We make the cost of attacking Earth so devastating that even if they win, they lose. She stood at attention. But I don't think it will come to that, Ambassador. Because humanity has one advantage that no other species in the Council possesses: we've spent our entire existence as underdogs. We've survived ice ages, plagues, world wars, and our own worst impulses. We're still here, still fighting, still reaching for the stars despite every setback. Her eyes blazed with fierce determination. Let the Council laugh at our primitive fleet. Let our enemies underestimate us. They're about to learn the most important lesson in human history: we don't need to be the strongest or the most advanced. We just need to be too stubborn to quit and too clever to fight fair. Marcus initiated the Prometheus's departure sequence. We're burning hard for Earth, maximum acceleration. Travel time, 5 months, 3 weeks. He met Sarah's eyes. I suggest you use that time to prepare diplomatic responses for after we reveal Omega. Because one way or another, the galaxy is about to discover that humanity is done asking for permission to survive. As the ship turned toward home, Sarah took one last look at the Council facility receding in the distance, that magnificent structure representing the pinnacle of galactic civilization. Somewhere in there, 73 species were congratulating themselves on efficiently dismissing the primitive humans. They had no idea that they'd just made the worst strategic miscalculation in Council history. Sarah touched the viewport, a promise to the stars beyond. Let them laugh while they can, she whispered. The joke's about to be on them. The journey back to Earth felt interminable. Sarah spent her days preparing diplomatic contingency plans and her nights staring at star maps, watching the red markers at the solar system's edge slowly shift positions. The unknown fleet was tightening its formation, and Earth's deep space monitoring network tracked every movement. By the time the Prometheus crossed into the inner system, the tension aboard ship was palpable. Captain Rodriguez had drilled her crew relentlessly, preparing for combat scenarios that officially shouldn't be possible for a human vessel. Sarah had stopped questioning the contradictions. Nothing about humanity's situation made sense anymore, except the brutal logic of survival. Earth orbit was controlled chaos when they arrived. The 42 ships of the public fleet had arranged themselves in defensive formations around the planet, their hulls gleaming with fresh ablative armor and newly installed weapons systems that, Sarah now understood, were deliberately inferior to what humanity could actually produce. Thousands of smaller craft buzzed between them, supply shuttles, repair drones, and evacuation vessels preparing to move critical personnel to underground facilities. Admiral Okonkwo had transferred her command to the ECS Valiant, the flagship of Earth's public fleet, a massive carrier that housed 300 fighters and served as the visible symbol of humanity's defensive capabilities. Sarah watched the orchestrated dance of preparation and felt a chill. This wasn't a drill. This was war. The summons to Lunar Command came within hours of docking. Sarah took a military shuttle to the moon's far side, her first visit to the Omega facilities that she'd only seen in holographic briefings. The shuttle descended into a crater designated Armstrong 7 on public maps, listed as a mining operation. The deception was perfect until they passed through a camouflage field and suddenly Sarah was looking at a military installation that rivaled anything from Earth's greatest science fiction. Massive hangar bays carved into the lunar rock housed the ships she'd seen in the briefings, but the reality was far more impressive than any hologram. The dreadnought Indomitable hung in the largest bay, a vessel 3 kilometers long bristling with weapons systems that combined human engineering with alien principles to create something entirely new. Commander Eliza Reeves met her at the facility entrance, a tall woman with auburn hair pulled back in a regulation bun and cybernetic enhancements visible along her left arm, technology the Council believed humans hadn't mastered. Ambassador Chen, welcome to Omega Base. I wish the circumstances were better. Her handshake was firm, confident. Admiral Okonkwo has asked me to serve as your liaison during the operation. I'll be coordinating communications between the public fleet, Omega Fleet, and your diplomatic channels. Sarah studied the woman who'd been working in humanity's greatest secret for years. How long have you been stationed here, Commander? 8 years, Eliza replied, leading her through corridors that combined stark military efficiency with cutting-edge technology. I was part of the second wave of personnel, back when this facility was barely functional. We lived in temporary habitats, worked 18-hour shifts, all while maintaining cover stories about mining operations and research postings. She glanced at Sarah with something like pride. Everyone here volunteered, knowing we might never receive public recognition for our work. We did it because someone had to make sure Earth could defend itself. They entered a command center that would have seemed impossible 6 months ago. Holographic displays showed the entire solar system in real time, with the Omega Fleet's positions marked in blue and the unknown contacts in red. Marcus was already there, coordinating with tactical officers, his expression focused and calm. Sarah moved to stand beside him, watching the displays with growing dread. The red markers had multiplied. How many? She asked quietly. Marcus didn't look away from the tactical plot. 63 confirmed vessels, with possible additional contacts still obscured by whatever cloaking technology they're using. They'll enter Mars orbit within 36 hours at current velocity. He finally met her eyes, and she saw the weight he carried. This is it, Sarah. Everything we've built, everything we've prepared for. It all comes down to the next few days. Admiral Okonkwo's voice crackled over the command channel. All stations, this is Valiant Actual. Unknown Fleet has just transmitted on open frequencies. The Admiral's tone was carefully neutral, but Sarah heard the tension underneath. Patching through now. The voice that filled the command center was unlike anything Sarah had heard before, a harmonic resonance that suggested something not quite organic but not fully synthetic either. The translation systems struggled before settling on stilted English, primitive inhabitants of the third planet. You have been evaluated and found suitable for incorporation. Surrender your world and submit to processing. Resistance will be eliminated. Compliance will be rewarded with continuation of biological function in service to the aggregate. The channel cut off, leaving silence in its wake. Sarah felt ice in her veins. The aggregate? Does anyone recognize that designation? Eliza was already pulling up database searches, her cybernetic interface allowing her to query systems faster than manual input. Negative. No match in council records, human intelligence archives, or any first contact databases. This is a completely unknown entity. She looked up, her expression grim. But the message is clear enough. They're not here to negotiate or conquer in any traditional sense. They want to harvest us. Marcus slammed his fist on the console. Like hell they will. Admiral, recommend we proceed to combat alert status Alpha. Deploy public fleet to intercept positions and prepare Omega fleet for secondary engagement. Okonkwo's response was immediate. Concur. All public fleet vessels, battle stations. This is not a drill. Unknown hostile force approaching Earth with apparent invasion intent. All personnel to combat positions. The command center erupted into controlled activity as years of planning shifted into execution. Sarah found herself moved to an observation station, out of the way of tactical personnel but with full access to communication systems. Her job now was to document everything and prepare for the diplomatic aftermath. Assuming there was an aftermath to prepare for. The battle began at Mars orbit, just as predicted. Earth's public fleet engaged the unknown vessels with conventional weapons, railguns, missile batteries, and laser arrays that represented the pinnacle of humanity's openly acknowledged technology. For 12 minutes, it looked almost even. Earth's ships fought with desperate courage, their captains executing maneuvers that pushed their vessels to structural limits. They scored hits, damaging several enemy craft and destroying at least 3. Sarah felt a surge of hope watching the tactical displays. Maybe they could win this without revealing Omega. Maybe humanity's public capabilities would be enough. Then the unknown fleet stopped toying with them. The enemy vessels activated some kind of energy shield that made Earth's weapons splash harmlessly against invisible barriers. Return fire came in the form of crimson energy beams that sliced through human ships like paper. The ECS Churchill exploded, 2,000 souls vaporized in an instant. The Yamato and Europa followed, their hulls rupturing as alien weapons overloaded their reactors. Sarah watched in horror as the symbols representing human ships winked out one by one on the tactical display. Admiral Okonkwo was ordering retreats, trying to preserve what remained of the fleet, but the enemy pursued relentlessly. They're hurting us, Marcus observed, his tactical mind still working even in the face of disaster. Pushing the public fleet back toward Earth, making us cluster our defensive positions. He looked to Eliza. They want to destroy our capabilities in one concentrated strike, probably as a demonstration before they begin whatever processing means. His jaw tightened. Which means it's time. Commander Reeves, activate Protocol Omega. Full authorization code, Sierra Victor 77 Tango Whiskey. Eliza's fingers flew across her interface. Omega activation confirmed. All vessels, this is Lunar Command. Protocol Omega is live. I repeat, Omega is live. Show them what we're really made of. The lunar surface erupted. Camouflage fields dropped across a dozen craters, revealing launch facilities and weapons emplacements that had been hidden for 3 decades. The Omega fleet launched in perfect coordination, dreadnoughts emerging from underground hangar bays, cruisers and destroyers accelerating from concealed positions around Earth's moon and orbital facilities, fighters streaming out in formations that would have made any military historian proud. Sarah watched on the displays as 300 human warships that weren't supposed to exist suddenly appeared on every sensor in the solar system. The enemy fleet's advance stuttered, their formations disrupting as they tried to process this new threat. The Galactic Council's monitoring station in the outer system immediately began broadcasting. Unidentified human vessels, you are in violation of the technological concordat. Cease military operations and prepare for inspection. The message repeated in multiple languages, automated and officious. Sarah almost laughed at the absurdity. Earth was fighting for survival against an enemy that wanted to harvest humanity, and the Council was worried about treaty violations. Marcus evidently shared her sentiment. Send to Council Station, currently occupied with uninvited guests. Council is welcome to join the fight or shut up. Earth out. The communications officer transmitted the message verbatim, and Sarah saw several people in the command center smile grimly. The Omega fleet engaged the enemy with weapons that finally evened the odds. Quantum torpedoes, reverse-engineered from Council commercial shipping technology and modified with human ingenuity, phased through the enemy shields and detonated inside their ships. Plasma cannons, based on designs humanity had quietly stolen from a Zafrani commercial database, carved through alien hulls. And then there were the uniquely human innovations, kinetic kill vehicles that used no exotic particles or energy signatures, just tremendous velocity and dense metals, fired from railguns that could accelerate projectiles to significant fractions of light speed. The enemy shields, designed to deflect energy weapons, proved far less effective against what amounted to very sophisticated rocks traveling at relativistic speeds. The dreadnought Indomitable became the tip of the spear, Commander Reeves personally leading the charge from the ship's bridge. Sarah listened to the combat chatter, heard Eliza's calm voice directing fire missions and coordinating fleet movements like she'd been born to it. Destroyer Wing 3, focus fire on the enemy flagship. Cruiser groups, provide screening. Fighter squadrons, I want harassment runs on their point defense systems. The Omega fleet moved like a single organism, 300 ships executing complex maneuvers that spoke to years of training and preparation. The enemy fleet, larger in numbers, found itself outmaneuvered by ships that shouldn't have existed in tactics they clearly hadn't anticipated. Marcus was watching something on a secondary display, his expression thoughtful. They're adapting. See how their formation is shifting. They're trying to create a kill box, force our ships into a concentrated area where they can bring overwhelming fire to bear. He opened a channel to Commander Reeves. Indomitable, be advised, enemy is attempting tactical encirclement vector 7-3. Recommend, Eliza's voice cut in, already on it, Commander Webb. Dreadnought Unbroken is moving to block their flanking maneuver. We've run these scenarios 1,000 times. There was a pause, then she added with grim humor, turns out fighting simulations against Council-level technology for 8 years provides excellent preparation. The battle raged for 6 hours, a brutal slugging match in the space between Mars and Earth. Both sides took losses. Humanity's Omega fleet lost 11 destroyers, 4 cruisers, and too many fighters to count in real time. But the enemy was bleeding worse. Their vessels, whatever they were, had superior individual technology but lacked the coordinated tactical doctrine that humanity had spent millennia perfecting through endless wars. Every mistake the enemy made cost them ships. Every advantage they pressed was met with a carefully prepared counter. Sarah found herself thinking about the Galactic Council, about their casual dismissal of human military capabilities. They'd never had to fight for survival like this. Their technology had advanced peacefully over thousands of years, conflicts resolved through diplomacy and mutual benefit. They'd forgotten, if they ever knew, what it meant to face an existential threat. The turning point came when Commander Reeves identified the enemy command vessel and executed what she called Operation Crazy Ivan, a maneuver apparently named after some ancient Earth naval tactic. The Indomitable and 3 supporting cruisers charged directly at the enemy flagship, taking tremendous damage but closing to point-blank range before unleashing every weapon system simultaneously. The enemy vessel's shields collapsed under the concentrated barrage, and quantum torpedoes tore through its hull, triggering a cascade failure that consumed the ship in a brilliant explosion. For a moment, the entire enemy fleet seemed to pause, as if uncertain. Then they began to retreat, accelerating toward the system's edge at velocities that Earth's sensors could barely track. Admiral Okonkwo's voice filled the command channel. All vessels, hold positions. Do not pursue beyond Mars orbit. Repeat, do not pursue. It was the right call, Sarah knew. Chasing a retreating enemy of unknown capability into deep space would be tactically foolish. But she could hear the frustration in the Admiral's voice, the desire to eliminate the threat completely rather than simply drive it off. Marcus leaned back in his chair, the tension draining from his shoulders. Status report. All Omega vessels, sound off. The reports came in one by one, damaged but operational, casualties moderate, ammunition depleted to 40% of load, but every ship that survived the battle was still capable of fighting if needed. Sarah realized she'd been holding her breath and forced herself to exhale slowly. They'd won. Humanity had faced an unknown enemy with superior technology and not only survived but driven them off. The cost had been high, nearly 2,000 confirmed dead from the public fleet and another 800 from Omega, but Earth itself remained secure. She pulled up a communication interface, knowing her real work was about to begin. This is Ambassador Chen to Galactic Council Monitoring Station. Earth requests immediate emergency session to discuss recent hostile action by unknown force in our system. We also need to discuss recent developments in our defensive capabilities. The response came not from the automated monitoring station but from High Arbiter Thelzara directly, the energy being's voice carrying notes that Sarah's cultural training couldn't quite interpret. Ambassador Chen. The Council has observed the engagement. A delegation is en route to your system, estimated arrival in 3 standard cycles. I must inform you that Earth faces serious questions regarding technological concordat violations. There was a pause that felt weighted with significance. However, I must also acknowledge that you faced a threat the Council failed to identify or address. This complicates matters. We will discuss this when we arrive. Marcus caught Sarah's eye and nodded toward a private conference room. She followed him, grateful to escape the organized chaos of the command center. Once the door sealed, he pulled her into an unexpected embrace, his military composure finally cracking. I thought we were going to lose you when you went to the Council station. I thought they might decide humans were too primitive to bother warning and you'd be stuck there when the attack came. His voice was rough with emotion. Sarah returned the embrace, suddenly aware of how much fear she'd been suppressing. I thought the same about you when the battle started. Watching those ships die, knowing you were coordinating the response. She pulled back to look at him. We've been colleagues for 3 years, Marcus. Why are we only having this conversation now? He smiled, that genuine expression so different from his usual professional mask. Because for 3 years, we both had jobs that required complete focus. You were preparing diplomacy for first contact scenarios, I was helping build a secret fleet to defend Earth. Neither of us had room for distractions. His hand came up to cup her face. But now, after watching humanity stand up to an existential threat and survive? Life's too short not to acknowledge what's been building between us. Sarah felt herself smile despite the exhaustion, despite the diplomatic crisis looming, despite everything. That's possibly the least romantic declaration I've ever heard, Commander. Romance is overrated, he replied, but his eyes were warm. I'm offering honesty. After everything we've been through, everything we're about to face when the Council arrives, I wanted you to know that you're not alone in this. Before Sarah could respond, he kissed her, gentle and careful, asking rather than demanding. She answered by pulling him closer, letting 3 years of professional distance and suppressed attraction finally surface. When they broke apart, she was breathless and he was grinning like an idiot. We should probably get back to the command center, she said without making any move to leave. Probably, he agreed, equally motionless. The galactic crisis can wait 5 more minutes. They returned to duty eventually, slipping back into professional roles with the ease of long practice. But something had shifted. Sarah felt it as she prepared briefing documents for the Council's arrival, a sense that humanity's isolation was ending. Marcus felt it as he coordinated repair operations and casualty reports, a certainty that Earth had crossed the threshold. The Omega fleet had revealed itself, and there was no going back to the comfortable fiction of primitive humans fumbling toward the stars. Commander Reeves felt it aboard the Indomitable as she walked through corridors scarred by battle, her crew exhausted but triumphant. Admiral Okonkwo felt it from the Valiant's bridge, looking at Earth hanging peaceful and blue, still free, still human. 3 days later, the Galactic Council delegation arrived in a massive diplomatic vessel that made even the Indomitable look small. High Arbiter Thelzara led a delegation that included representatives from 20 major species, all demanding explanations for Earth's hidden fleet. Sarah met them in orbit aboard the repaired Prometheus, Marcus at her side, both wearing dress uniforms that somehow felt more legitimate now. The council representatives radiated disapproval, their various forms of body language all conveying the same message: humanity had broken the rules and would face consequences. Sarah stood before them, no longer the supplicant hoping for scraps of technology and protection. High Arbiter, honored representatives, Earth acknowledges that we developed advanced military capabilities without council oversight. We did so because when we reported a potential threat to our system, we were dismissed. When we requested defensive technologies, we were laughed at. When we asked for help, we were told to come back in 1,000 years. Her voice was steady, carrying the weight of humanity's struggle. So we helped ourselves. We built what we needed to survive using our own ingenuity, our own resources, and yes, some reverse-engineered council technology that we acquired through legitimate commercial channels. The VRYNN ambassador, the same one who'd mocked Earth's fleet, slithered forward. You violated the technological concordat. The penalties for such violations include economic sanctions, technological quarantine, or forced dismantling of unlawful systems. Before Sarah could respond, Marcus stepped forward, his military bearing impeccable and his tone ice-cold. Then I suppose the council should have let us die. Would that have been preferable? A primitive species wiped out by an unknown threat, all while maintaining proper treaty compliance? He gestured toward the viewport where repair operations continued on battle-damaged vessels. Earth lost nearly 3,000 people defending our home against an enemy you didn't detect, didn't warn us about, and didn't offer to help fight. If that's the protection council membership offers, we'll pass. High Arbiter Thelzara's colors shifted through a complex pattern. Commander Webb, I understand your anger, but, the Arbiter stopped, seemed to reconsider. Actually, no. I don't understand your anger. The council has never faced what you describe. We've had peace for 10,000 years, maintained through mutual cooperation and shared advancement. The concept of fighting for survival against an unknown threat is, outside our experience. The admission hung in the air, stunning in its implications. The most advanced civilizations in the galaxy had become so secure, so comfortable, that they'd forgotten what true danger felt like. Sarah saw the opening and took it. Then perhaps Earth has something to offer the Council after all. We're newcomers, yes. Primitive in many ways, absolutely. But we remember how to fight. We know how to face the unknown and adapt. The enemy that attacked us is still out there, and I guarantee they're not the only threat lurking in unexplored space. She straightened, meeting the Arbiter's gaze directly. Earth proposes a partnership. Not charity from advanced species to primitive humans, but genuine collaboration. We'll share our tactical innovations, our defensive strategies, everything we learned building the Omega fleet. In exchange, the Council provides the advanced technology we need to fully protect ourselves and helps us identify what attacked us. The Council representatives erupted into debate, various species arguing in their native languages while translators struggled to keep up. Sarah and Marcus stood silent, letting them process. Finally, Thelzara raised a glowing appendage for quiet. This is unprecedented. The Council will need to deliberate, consult with member governments, review precedent. The Arbiter's colors shifted to what might have been respect or curiosity. But I will recommend that we consider Earth's proposal seriously. You've demonstrated capabilities that frankly shocked us. More importantly, you've reminded us that the galaxy is larger and more dangerous than we'd allowed ourselves to believe. As the Council delegation departed to begin their deliberations, Sarah and Marcus returned to the Prometheus. Through the viewport, Earth gleamed below, scarred but unbroken, threatened but triumphant. Think they'll actually accept the partnership? Marcus asked, slipping his hand into hers now that they were alone. Sarah considered the question carefully. I think they're terrified. Not of us, but of what we represent. The unknown enemy, the gaps in their knowledge, their own complacency. She smiled slowly. And yes, I think they'll accept. Because the alternative is admitting that their 10,000 years of peace made them weak, and nobody wants to face that truth alone. 2 weeks later, the Galactic Council officially recognized Earth as a probationary member with provisional technology sharing agreements pending further negotiation. The Omega fleet was retroactively legitimized, and humanity gained access to Council scientific databases. In exchange, Earth's military academies began accepting students from Council species, teaching tactics and strategic thinking that had been honed through millennia of human conflict. It wasn't the relationship Sarah had hoped to negotiate 6 months ago. It was better, built on mutual respect rather than charity, on what humanity could offer rather than what they lacked. Commander Eliza Reeves received a commendation and promotion to captain, taking command of the Indomitable as it led the newly recognized Omega fleet on patrol missions through Earth's system. Admiral Okonkwo began working with Council military advisors to integrate human and alien technologies, creating hybrid systems that combine the best of both approaches. And Sarah Chen, newly appointed as Earth's first permanent Council representative, prepared to leave for the Council's Central Worlds with Marcus Webb at her side as military attaché and, privately, as the partner she'd finally allowed herself to acknowledge. The night before departure, they stood on the observation deck of Omega Base, looking at Earth below and the stars beyond. The galaxy's going to be different now, Marcus said quietly. Humanity's not just out here anymore. We're part of it, for better or worse. Sarah leaned against him, comfortable in a way she'd never allowed herself to be during the crisis. The galaxy was already different. They just didn't know it yet. She pointed toward the distant stars where the unknown enemy had fled. We proved that humans don't need to be the most advanced or the strongest. We just need to be too stubborn to quit and too clever to fight fair. Marcus laughed, the sound warm and the observation decks quiet. Pretty sure that's going to be humanity's reputation now. The primitive species that built a secret fleet, drove off an unknown enemy, and basically forced the Galactic Council to take them seriously through sheer audacity. He turned her to face him. And you're the diplomat who has to make that work in polite society. I don't envy you. Sarah smiled, pulling him down for a kiss that tasted like victory and promise and the unknown future spreading before them. Then it's lucky I have a brilliant military commander to watch my back. Always, he promised. For as long as the stars shine. Above them, through the lunar base's transparent dome, Earth's Omega fleet patrolled in precise formations, guardians of a world that refused to be helpless. And far beyond, in the depths of space where Council sensors rarely reached, unknown civilizations watched and wondered about the primitive species that had somehow changed the galaxy's balance. Humanity had arrived on the galactic stage, not as supplicants or subordinates, but as equals who'd earned their place through courage, ingenuity, and the unwillingness to accept defeat. The Council had laughed at Earth's primitive fleet. They weren't laughing anymore. And in the end, that made all the difference.